Since the late 1800s, we have been tracking the world and its temperatures. And this is something that a bunch of researchers have been doing globally. So the global warming is not something new. It's been going on for quite some time. And we know today that it's definitely connected to CO2. So, of course, yeah, we have a big problem. Everyone knows this by now. A lot of presidents, politicians don't believe it still, but researchers will definitely catch up. But in my work, we have started looking into this deeply to try to understand how come, if we've known this for so many years, we haven't turned and become more sustainable? How come all these companies that manufacture and produce things, they are not going over to become more sustainable? So what we did was that we started looking into what are the different effects and things that are happening around us and within companies that turn them not to do this, to go over to become more sustainable. So when we meet a bunch of corporate people, sustainable managers or CEOs, we have come to realize that they are actually the big problem. They are the root of the big problem, why this earth is not more sustainable today. So when we did a deep research looking into this, we realized that it has a lot to do with the different industrial revolutions. And especially when the second industrial revolution started with assembly lines and mass production, that's where everything really took off. That's where everything started happening really globally. But when we look into this and all these different industrial revolutions, they have changed our lives drastically. They have been disruptive in each period and still are. But when we look into this, we have also connected, of course, globally, we're looking into the different generations. But what we can see especially here is that imagine if the second industrial revolution started here, that means that we have a bunch of people, us, generations, thinking the same way. And that means that we have about 5 generations right now in the workforce that have been grown up with the same mentality, the same thoughts, same ideas, same way of manufacturing things and actually selling them, which is pretty crazy. Pretty normal, but pretty crazy when you start looking into it. Because the process is very linear, that you take something, a resource, you create something, you sell it, use it, and then we just throw it away. So when you start looking into this and really start thinking about it, it's a pretty crazy thing that we take something, make it, and we just throw it away. So, of course, we're using way too much resources. And of course, we have overconsumption. The world from the second industrial revolution up until now, we're overconsuming totally. A lot of people are still today sitting at their house, ordering a pair of shoes, maybe 2 or 3 pair of shoes because they don't know the right size online. And then they try them out and then they send them back. So we have a mentality of shopping, getting rid of stuff very quickly, and that has turned out to be very, very deeply wrong. So we have this picture of, this is the typical picture that we see a lot of times, but it's not happening around us, it's somewhere else. So we're not deeply connected to what's really happening. And it all comes down to wealth, of course. Making money, making money, making money. That's what it's all about for all these corporations. But what we have come to realize when we really study this is, of course, that they have also invested in all these factories. They have put a lot of money into their business being streamlined, being perfect. So there's a lot of money put into this. So it's not that easy for them to just make a U-turn and change this whole business, change the idea of making money. It is a very, very, very big deal. So yes, these guys are the problem. They are actually the root of the problem, why this world is not becoming more sustainable. So what we see definitely, what I've been looked into, is that we have a bunch of habits that needs to change drastically. And luckily enough, we're monitoring what's happening around the world. This is actually, for me, the root of everything, the overshoot day. And this is the day that more or less tells us how much resources we're using out of this planet. And as you can see from the 1971, the red is actually the second planet amount of resources we're using. So you can see already now here in 2022, we're using almost 2 globes of resources to actually manufacturing all the products that we're using. So this is actually the root of everything. And of course, we have a bunch of guidelines to create a better world. But still, if you look at the recent data, we're not getting there as fast as we should. The global goals are made to be set for 2030, but we're not still there. We're not getting there. Things are not happening fast enough. So the big question, of course, how can we use less resources? How can we create a world where we use less resources and actually still have the rich life that we have today? And if we look at it, again, the linear way of manufacturing and producing things, we know that is not good. And today in the world, we have somehow gone to starting recycling. At least here in Sweden, we're recycling a lot. But we're a small country. There are a lot of countries that doesn't even recycle. They don't even know the concept. But we already know today that we need to move to a much more circular way of thinking, because we know we're using way too much resources. We need to somehow reuse these resources that we put into products. So that's why there's a lot of different smart people that have come up with business ideas for big corporations to understand, to make money out of circular economy. And of course, if I come and show this one to these 2 corporate guys on the picture, they're going to look at me and say, it's not going to happen. Look how complex it is. It's, in and out. And what are we selling? How do we earn money? Why are we getting, what's happening? It's too complex still. But what I have come to realize is that this of designing for circularity is especially something that can push all these corporations to do right. So for instance, imagine you have a chair in a linear way of making it and constructing it. This chair is glued, it's sewed, stitched, hammered together. It's made for the user to use it, and then afterwards, the manufacturer haven't even a thought of what's happening when the user is done with it. So design for circularity is more or less that when you design the product, you rethink everything, how it's being put together to actually deassemble things again. So imagine if this little armrest breaks, you could deassemble that, and the business idea is actually to send that back to the company, and they could refurbish it and send it back to me instead of me buying a whole new chair. I just buy that little part. So the idea is actually to reuse things much, much more. So the philosophy of designing products that can be reused much more is, of course, that somehow you put in virgin materials. Sometimes it's probably recycled material you start off by putting into a product. Then you design and manufacture it, sell it, consume it, and then instead of putting it into waste, throw it in a landfill, you can deassemble the product or parts of the product and reuse it again. And that is the whole philosophy of circular economy and design products for circularity, that you actually can decompose things, sell parts of it, or get it back again. So this is some data that's very interesting. 80% comes from more or less the design part, the environmental impact. So that means that when designers are sitting and working with this and designing something, we can actually do a real change. We can actually reinforce our clients, manufacturers of products, to think differently. So designers are more or less getting into this. There's a huge movement going on where designers are pushing this because this type of data is coming out, that we actually can make a difference. But to still get the corporate people to understand what type of business ideas you can get out of it, there's tons of ideas of course, buying one product and then rent it out. You manufacture it one time, but you rent the product out. Or parts that can be deassembled, and then the material of the parts can be reused for something else, to upcycle things. So today, there's actually business cases starting to prove that you can earn more money by giving the product a circular way than by manufacturing in a linear process. And this is where it gets interesting. This is where you have all of the corporate people's attention. Money. You can make more money, and this is the driver, sadly to say, for sustainability. Or a law. The European Union are trying to impose something called the Circular Economy Action Plan. And this will actually force all companies that are producing something to actually track what the material they put in the products. So when you decompose a product, you know what material it is so you can reuse it again. This will change everything. And right now, the law looks like it's going to go through at 2027. We don't know. All countries, of course, and their corporations trying to push this away. But this will change things. So with all the designers trying to rethink how they can design for circularity together with this law, I believe this is the step that actually can turn this world into a more sustainable place. So yes, they are the problem, but I think we have a solution for them. And I definitely think it has to do with designing products for a circular way and a circular environment. Thank you.